Hey guys, ladylocks here, and today I want to give a couple of different tips on how to pick a Masterlock. I want to give you some tips on tensioning and tips on what types of picks to get when you're first starting out. And I did have a couple of questions over the last week from a couple of people, and I want to try to cover those things in this video so that hopefully it helps somebody. All right, here we go. So I want to start out with pick choices. So when you're looking at picks, there's just so many choices of pick types, profiles, and widths, and everything like that, and it can be confusing. And if you don't consult with somebody, you can end up with hundreds of dollars of the wrong things and things that you're never going to use. So, you know, when you first start out, it's best that you ask around and find out some opinions on picks. But it comes down to personal preference, basically. You can ask one person what types of picks to use, and they will tell you one thing, and somebody else might tell you another thing. But basically, it comes all down to what you like and what works best for you. I suggest that you get a couple of different picks, hooks, just basic hooks. You need standard, medium, and long. And I suggest you get them from a couple different places. There are a bunch of different manufacturers out there. There's all different kinds of, you know, hooks that you can get from all different places, but you know, each one's going to offer you something different as far as feedback, and it's going to feel different. You know, they're shaped different, they all have different handles, they are going to feel different, and they're going to give different feedback, and that's the most important part, is the feedback. You might like the feedback from a Peterson hook way better than a Saldert hook. You might like Jimmy Longs better than Peterson. You know, you might like Sparrows. I've got Sparrows too. I've got several different types of hooks from all kinds of different places, and I've used them all. I've used all of these hooks in one lock or another. But I suggest you just get a couple of hooks from a couple different places and see what you like best, and then you can order different profiles and things like that as you go. Just as you see what you're going to need, you can get them from your favorite pick manufacturers, and grow your set instead of just buying a whole entire set when you first start out. Kind of try to start with a small couple and grow it out to what you need, what you like best, and what works best for you, instead of grabbing a giant set from somewhere and then having half of the set you're not using, and you have no other options for picks. And if you don't understand the feedback you're feeling from that type of pick, you're kind of stuck with it because that's the set you bought, and you don't have any other brands to try to see if you might like the feedback from a different brand better, or even just the handles from a different brand. You can make your own handles on a lot of picks using that shrink wrap. I see a lot of that. And whatever else you can find. There's 3D printed scales. There's all kind of different handles, but you can make your own. You can buy them already with handles. It's a lot. You can't know what you like until you try a bunch of different ones. So that's my suggestion on hooks. And I also suggest that you get a flat tipped hook, because a pointed tipped hook, there's less of an area for you to hit the point of a pin. When you have a pointed tip hook, there's just a very tiny point, and you have to be able to land that on the point of a pin inside your lock, and it can be very tough. You can frustrating. You can slide off and on the pins. It's just crazy. You'll slide off of it while you're trying to push it up. If your tension's wrong, it's a nightmare. So I suggest that you try a flat tipped hook. It gives you a bigger area to land your pick on that pin, and you won't slide off as much, and I think you'll have a lot better luck with that than you would with a pointed hook. So that is my suggestion. I'm not saying don't get them, because you will need them eventually on certain types of locks and things like that. You'll need a pointed hook, but definitely get yourself some flat ones for sure. And if you notice you're having trouble when you're using a pointed one, try a flat one and see if that helps, because sometimes just switching it up makes all the difference. when you're picking. Alright, so for tensioners, I suggest that you try a Topic keyway tensioner. You can get those from several different manufacturers. For pick manufacturers, they sell tensioners as well. Usually if you did get a set, it comes with a bunch of bottom of the keyway tensioners, which will look something like this, which is fine if you've already started out using them. But I suggest you switch to something that has a Topic keyway tensioner. Something like this tensioner. It has both, so you can switch back and forth. This is actually a Southern Specialties Longhorn tension set, and that's from lockpicktools.com, and I really like these a lot. They work on a ton of different locks. They're kind of my favorite tensioners at the moment, just because I've been able to use them on a bunch of Euro cylinders and things that have really crazy keyways. But this works just as good in the keyways, and when you do use the Topic keyway, you're going to get a lot of it's going to fly across the room when you're picking. You're going to bump into it and just shoot it across the room a bunch of times until you get used to it. It is frustrating, but it's worth it to get used to it now. And also, when you have something in the top of the keyway to tension your lock, you have a lot more freedom down here in the keyway to actually pick the lock. You've got all this room now. When you have a bottom of keyway tensioner in there, you are limiting your space that you can pick the lock in. Suddenly that's a limited area, and also you're going to be kind of smashed between your tensioner and the pins, and you're going to have feedback from the warding, the tensioner, and the pins, and it kind of gets a little frustrating because there's just so much that you're feeling. You can't really differentiate what you're feeling. So I definitely suggest you attempt Topic keyway tension, at least when you're trying to feel the pins and figure out what's going on in there. It will kind of give you a better sense of what the pins actually feel like, so you can narrow that down. Alright, so when you're looking at your lock, this is the keyway here. Your keyway is the outside, and once you go into the lock, anything that any metal in there that isn't the pins, that's the warding of the lock. So all of this here is warding. Everything I'm touching inside the lock that isn't a pin is called the warding of the lock. Okay, so you can see this little piece sticking out here. That goes the entire way down the lock. Okay, everything you see here is the exact shape the entire way down your lock. So inside is going to be just like the outside, so you know what to expect. What I suggest you do is take your pick, learn how to hold it. People hold their hooks differently, they hold their picks differently. I tend to hold mine just like this, and I use this finger to kind of hold on to the lock and guide my pick through the lock. Some people use the actual like middle of the pad of their finger right here, so they use that part of their finger to guide their hook. I think it's all just personal preference of what you feel more feedback with and what feels better for you. And I just kind of like to hold my pick like this. So you want to practice holding your pick and going into your lock and feeling the pins. Click on them, see if you can count them as you're clicking through it. Press up on them, see how they feel. Are they springy? How springy are they? What's it feel like? And honestly, just see if you can count them. There should be 4 pins in here, so you want to count, see if you can feel all 4 pins. Get used to where the warding is. See what angle you're going to put your pick in. Your angle, the angle that you're going to use to hit those pins, so that you can remember that when you finally put your tension on, because you're going to have to pick at an angle usually off of, like kind of balancing off the warding in certain places. So it's a lot to remember. It really is, and that's what makes it so difficult at first. Once you get past this point, though, it does become a little bit easier as you get harder locks, just because all of these things become kind of second nature to you, and you kind of don't really need to think it through each time. You kind of just do it instead of thinking about it. Alright guys, once again, I'm going to stop right here before we actually pick this because I want to talk about something very quickly and go over it with you, but this is called the pin states, and it's very important when you're picking a lock. There are several videos out there on pin states. I suggest you check them out and watch them because it's very important when you're picking. There are 3 pin states. The first pin state is a springy pin, and that is, you know, of course, when you have no tension on the lock, you felt that when you were going through your lock. Hopefully you went through and you felt these pins springy. When you put your tension on, you'll feel that on some pins, and then you're going to feel other things, and one of the other things is called a binding pin. So you're going to feel something that doesn't want to move when you press it, and that is called a binding pin. And the binding pin is the pin that you want to actually try to pick. All right, and then after that one is picked and you've got your driver up over the shear line, your key pin's going to fall back down, and that's going to create a feeling of a jiggling pin. So that is when you know your pins are set. When you feel them jiggling, you know they're set. When they're springy, then you know you don't need to worry about them, and when they're binding, you need to press up on them. Those are the 3 pin states, and that's going to help us when we pick this lock. When I place the tension on the lock, I want to say this too, you just want to turn it until that core turns a little bit, and then just stop. And when you're holding your tension, make sure that your tension hand is very relaxed and in control of the tension at all times. You don't want this to get you know, tight. You don't want to press a lot on the tensioner. Tensioning your lock is half of what you do to pick your lock, so it's very, very important, and it's going to be different for every lock, so that might get frustrating for you, but you'll learn to experiment with it until you get the right tension. You know, and you'll learn that over time and practicing on locks. There's really no way to explain how to tension each different lock. It's just all in the feeling that you're getting when you're trying to pick the pins. That will come with time as well. But for now, we're just going to turn the tension bar till the core turns and stops, and then we're just going to hold it there gently. You can put a tiny bit of pressure on it. They say as much pressure as you would need to hold a piece of paper to the wall with your finger. So not much. And now I'm going to go in and test these pins. The first one gave a little bit of resistance, but it kind of feels springy. It's a bit confusing, and but I think it's springy. And I'm going to go on to the second one, and that one feels springy as well. And now I'm going to find my third pin, and that one feels binding, so I'm going to give it a push, and I got a really nice click out of that, and this lock actually opened. So that first pin that was, I thought was binding a bit and a little springy, I actually ended up setting that one, I guess, when I pushed on it. So it's not always going to be clear to you what's happening inside the lock, but you need to keep practicing. I hope that this kind of answered a couple questions that were asked of me, and you know, help somebody with their lock. One last thing before I do stop this video. With this Masterlock, if you take a look at where the keyway is turned when it is picked, in a picked state, when I do close this lock, that keyway flies all the way around, and now the pins are over here. So when you want to close the lock, you need to make sure that you close it in the correct direction. So pay attention to that. Pay attention always to where your pins are at before you just turn a core. Make sure you pay attention to where your pins are so that you know which way to, turn that core. So that was it. All right, take care, guys. Thanks for watching.